Hey everybody, my name is Mark, and today we're going to be unboxing a gift. All right, so every once in a while I'll do a trade, usually through Blade Binge, and it's for a pretty good amount of knives, like 1,000. I've gone up to $1,700 trades, like bundle trades. And this time I actually got a gift in return, which I think is like super cool. I wanted to unbox it live on the air, so to speak. So this is an Artisan Cutlery, and the number on it is 1821 November Lima Sierra Mike Echo Sierra. So that should mean something. And that's all that's on the box. So we're going to unbox this. It comes with a little card, and it's not really a COA or anything. It's just like specifications. So it's got the model number, and the blade steel is Damascus. The hardness is 59 to 61 Rockwell, and it's got G10 scales, and it's got ceramic balls, so it's running on bearings. And the process was CNC machine. So I don't know exactly what that means. Maybe it's got liners or something like that. And then care and maintenance on the other side. So that's very nice. And then inside we have a pouch. And the pouch has kind of an unfortunate logo, Artisan, I got to say. But, it's got a little velveteen pouch. So we're going to open this up. And we have an Artisan. This is the Mini Archaeo. And there's a few different versions of this knife. This one actually comes with a hand grenade pin, so that's awesome. Now, this is the slip joint, right? So this is a double detent slip joint. There are some that are, they look just like this. There's some have titanium or whatever, but they're a conventional, like a nested liner lock. And this is the slip joint version. It is Damascus. And so basically I had to kind of read up on this, because when you go on the site, Artisan Cutlery site, and you're reading about this knife, it says the blade is acid etched. So I'm old enough to remember when, unless you were spending thousands of dollars on a pocket knife, if it had Damascus steel, it was kind of fake. And what they used to do is just take an acid of some kind, and they would brush it all over the blade in different, patterns, and let it eat into the blade. You could feel it. It was like, it was really rough, it looked pretty bad. But that was what they were passing off as Damascus, because real Damascus was super expensive. So now they've got this way of doing Damascus with all these kind of, repeating patterns and things like that. That's what this has. And this one is still acid etched, so I had to kind of look it up. And so what they do is most, if it's a two-component laminated Damascus that's kind of folded together, you have to put something on the blade after it's done to make that stand out. Otherwise, it would be super faint, and it wouldn't have the effect that people want, when you're just looking at it. So they fold the steel, and they do all the things, and then they dip it in acid to get the different layers and different components of the steel to stand out from each other. And that's kind of what's going on here. So, this doesn't mean like acid etched. And I had to read all this. I'm sure everybody else knows this. I'm not real into Damascus. There's only a couple that I've seen that I kind of like. I prefer the SLD Magic, but there's a couple of Damascus blades out there that I like, and they're pretty expensive. They don't have these repeating patterns like this. But, you know, I mean, it's a gift. So this is pretty cool for a gift. I guess what you do is, because it is a slip joint and it's got a double detent, I don't know how exactly you tune this, but the flipper actually seems to work pretty well. And the detent seems like it would hold up. You know, I can see this maybe on a desk being used to open letters and things like that. I don't know. I would hate to use it out in the field or whatever. I'm not used to a slip joint. Maybe if you're used to carrying one and, you know how to handle it or whatever, it would make me nervous carrying one just out of the blue when I'm used to a blade that locks, you know. Then all of a sudden I'm not using one and I forget and I do something stupid and then, you know, I'm cutting my fingers off. That would be terrible. But this one, the detent seems pretty stiff, or the open detent. And so you actually have to kind of break it over a little bit. You can actually kind of flip it down once you get the detent broken. It's not like a super smooth action. I wouldn't characterize it like that. But it does work. And then once you have it open, if you wanted to do some hard use, things with this knife, you could put this little pin in here. And it's kind of strange because the pin, it's not threaded or anything like that. You just kind of put it in this hole and you put it all the way through to the other liner. And then basically you would have to hold it with your finger. So as long as you got your finger there, then that effectively locks the blade and it's not going to go anywhere. So, there's that. I just think that this would be better left indoors, just opening mail or slitting tape, something like that. But the one thing I did notice about this, not only do I want to see how this works, because I may have had a slip joint knife like back when I was a kid, which is, 50 years ago or something like that. I can't remember it, but I know they used to be pretty prevalent, and especially the little slip joint with like a nail nick up here, way back before flippers and, everything got fancy. But I might have had one back, when I was a kid, maybe a first knife or something like that. But I don't know exactly. I just know there's probably one detent ball in here and then two detent holes, one for open and one for closed. One thing I did notice about this knife, though, is that the whole blade seems to be shifted pretty far over to the pocket clip side. And it's not only back here, like, where you look at like blade centering, it's actually up here. So the whole blade just seems to be kind of listening to one side. And so I'm going to open this up real quick and I'm going to check it out because I've never opened a slip joint knife. And we're going to kind of see what's what. And it shouldn't take very long. We're going to see what kind of hardware this has. It looks like T8s and T6s. So I would say this is a T8 pivot. And then the body screws down here are definitely T6s. So we're going to pop this open. This may be a captive pivot. There's no, torque set or anything on the other side. So that would be amazing. And it looks like these little spacers are not captive either. So they're just kind of spinning around. And up. So I got one to catch. Looks like it's actually got some Loctite on there. Because when you're out chopping wood with this sucker, you would not want it to shake its screws loose. So we got another one out. And we're going to check this other one to see. So this one actually came out too. So I don't know if the backspacer is threaded or if there's a sleeve through the backspacer. Yeah, because this one's just spinning back here. So we're going to go ahead and take the pivot out. And I'm kind of anxious to see how all this works and why it's so far over on one side. Get away from there. You get away from there. Okay. So let's see. I'm going to open this blade up. And that was the blade stop pin that just kind of fell out there. And it looks like we're going to pop that open. Okay, so it does indeed. So this liner actually has the lock bar on it, or the detent bar, I guess. It's not really a lock bar. So it's got a little detent bar in there. It's got a detent ball, just like any other. And it's pressed in there, so it kind of sticks. And that's basically it on that side. There is a little flat in that hole where the pivot goes through, and so that is captured. And then on the blade side, we do have little bearings in there, and they're the smallest little bearings that I've ever seen. Yeah, those are tiny bearings. So that's kind of cool. And it looks like, I can't tell, it's kind of dirty inside. So basically, I can see the machining, and that is this a washer? Yep. Okay, so there is a washer there. And the machining for like where the washers sit and the bearings spin, those are kind of the same. So I still don't see a reason why it would be over to one side or the other. This right here, I have no idea what this is. This is even, it's not like bent, like there's no, pressure on the blade or anything like that. It's just kind of there. And I'm not sure why that's there. So I'm going to go ahead and take this other pivot, or this pivot's out with its collar. And that's the other bearing. So there is only one washer. And I'm not sure why that would be. But that might be why it's pushed over to one side. So, yeah. The liners aren't nesting the washers or anything like that. So they just spin on the inside of the liner there. And like I said, the milling in the blade to accept the bearing and the washer, or actually just a bearing in there, is the same on either side. So it's not like one. Is that deeper? You know what? Actually, I think it is a little deeper. I don't know if I'm going to be able to measure this. So that's like 28 thousandths deep on that one side. And then on this side, it is 22. So those are different. This one is shallower than this other side. So if I put a bearing in there, it does stick up past the blade surface. So technically that would be fine. This one over here, if I put that in there, it sticks up quite a bit farther, and you can see the difference. Okay, so we're getting close to an answer. So basically what was happening was it was closer to this side. So it was putting more pressure there, which means the washer and that's the shallower side, would have been probably on the right-hand side, and it was pushing it this way more. But since there's only one washer, you'd have to use the washer if you wanted it centered on the side that is deeper. So the washer would actually go over here. So we're going to try that. We're going to put it back together with the washer on the deeper side and see if that pushes it away from the pocket clip side. So that's kind of cool. And as far as the blade itself, there is 2 detents, and you can see where they've got that area kind of polished to make it smooth. So they polished out the little track where the detent ball goes, almost all the way. They kind of missed it over here. So they polished it where the balls are, or the holes are for the detent ball, but the track, they got most of it here, they got most of it there, but they kind of missed it over here. So it's still kind of going over some of this, you know, rougher area where the blade is coated. And I can kind of see what they're talking about as far as having to etch that, because the area inside, I don't know if you'll be able to see it. That shiny part there, you can see the Damascus material, like the 2 different laminated steels reflecting in that, right? But you can barely see it. Like there's hardly anything to see. You got to really look close. And so I can kind of understand why they would need to acid etch this blade to get that Damascus pattern to kind of stand out more. Because if it was just like polished, you wouldn't be able to see any of that. You'd have to really look close to see where all your money went. So that kind of makes sense. All right, so we're going to go ahead and throw this back together. And I'm going to, since I've got this apart, I'm just going to leave the little grenade pin out. And that's what we're going to do. So I've got, that is the lanyard loop pin. And this is the, let's see, we're going to go this way. So I'm going to build it up from the show side. And that is the captive side. So we're going to put the pivot back in there. Maybe. Come on. Come on. I should go just like this. There we go. Okay. Yep, that's in there good. So it looks like everything in here was pretty dry and kind of dirty for some reason. And so I'm going to go ahead and lube this up a little bit. And we're going to lubricate these bearings just a hair. The smallest bearings in the world. And see what that does. See if we can get something going. And so we were saying that we wanted to push this away from this side, which means the washer is going to go on this side. So on this other side, we're just going to place a bearing, which is super small and sticking to my finger. And then we're going to set the blade. Just like that. And then we're going to set another bearing. Just like this. And then we'll set the washer. And then we're going to throw it back together. We're going to put the blade stop pin back in, which is going to go right about here. And then these are going to stay because there's one screw that's left in there. kind of crunchy. And we'll put the pivot screw back in and see what happens. Okay, so that is fairly, yeah, that's tighter. Okay, so the blade is actually centered now. The pivot's a little tight, but that's cool. So we're going to put these body screws back in. And I think we might have just centered that blade. I wonder how that happened. Like it's almost like somebody was in there before, or somebody at the factory wasn't paying attention that day. That's kind of strange because the whole thing was just kicked over. And this is one of the reasons why I open up knives and check them, because you never know what you're going to get. And then we're going to adjust the detent. Which I think that's a pivot, because I have that cranked down pretty far. Yep. And so you break the detent over to close it, and the blade is pretty well centered. You can see inside here where the whole blade is centered now between the scales, so that's kind of cool. And the flipper action is not bad, actually. We're going to actuate it a few times and let that lubrication kind of go all over the place. It's such a small knife. Little tiny bearings. Every time I do that, I'm looking down here for my liner lock or frame lock. That's not bad. That's not bad. And like I say, with that detent, the detent is actually like, you know, holding that blade really well. You got to like click it over, you know. And now that it's got some lube in it, it's actually running a lot better. But I can see this being like on my desk, you know, just looking like another pocket knife. And it's just something that I use to slit envelopes, you know, or open up a box every now and then. So I can definitely see doing that with this knife. But anyway, we got it back together and we centered the blade and we lubed it and it needed it. And so that, folks, is my Mini Archaeo from Artisan Cutlery. And I thank you very much for watching.